Hello and welcome. I'm Alex Forbes. Natural gas markets function best and bring the maximum benefit to consumers when they are characterised by healthy levels of competition wherever possible. The process of market liberalisation that makes this possible is a complex one. Two regions that have managed the process successfully are the United States and the European Union. The path to market liberalisation is unique in each market, but there are common characteristics that enable the transition. To give us an insight into how market liberalisation has developed in these two regions and the lessons for other regions, I'm delighted to welcome ExxonMobil's Shelley Ruszkowski, Manager for Global Regulatory Affairs and Public Policy. Shelley, over to you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to talk today about the evolution of natural gas markets. Today I'll share with you our thoughts and observations on how competitive gas markets evolve over time and what we feel is important to note. As you know, the natural gas market is a dynamic worldwide market that's becoming more and more connected. With increasing discoveries of large natural gas resources and the ability to move gas by both pipeline and shipping, LNG, gas can reach many different markets. The natural gas business is among the most affected by legislative and regulatory change. It's often treated as a social product, and as such, government price regulation is common, as are domestic market and supply obligations. Extensive midstream infrastructure is managed via state-run vertically integrated gas companies or local utilities, or privatized companies with regulated access, tariffs, and rates of return. ExxonMobil participates in all parts of the natural gas value chain, except as a regulator. We participate from the development and production and transportation via pipeline to market or via liquefaction and subsequent transportation to a distant market. We're also large consumers of natural gas in our refineries and chemical plants around the world. We operate in many different countries with many different types of markets, and we've done it for a long time and are able to see trends and changes over long periods of time. When we look at global energy markets, we observe that each market has its unique combination of characteristics. And these are based on the overall government structure of that market, the economic status, whether it's a developed or developing country, the regulatory and market framework, the market participants, how many there are, who they are, the infrastructure development, the access to infrastructure, and the resource supply. Is there domestic production and or imports? The market demand, the sectors, the peaks, the seasonal and daily, all play into how that market performs. So when we talk about competitive natural gas markets, what do we mean? Here are some common characteristics of competitive natural gas market. There are multiple suppliers, there are multiple customers, there's freedom to choose the supplier or customer, the transportation and marketing activities are unbundled. The infrastructure, there's available capacity and new build is possible. Information transparency is present for prices, infrastructure capacity availability, and regulatory processes. There's also hub liquidity and many different types of participants. There's an independent regulator, and legal and regulatory stability is present. The largest global competitive natural gas markets in the world are the US and the European Union. Here is a table that talks about, that provides some of the information on these large markets. And a few things to note are that in the US, most of its production is domestic production, while in the European Union, domestic production is only about 22%, so they import the majority of their natural gas supply. In both markets, there are many trading hubs, and there's a significant transmission infrastructure, and there's also many receipt and delivery points and interconnection points. So when we talk about a natural gas market evolution, we look at it from this standpoint here. We have a chart here where on the x-axis is time, and on the y-axis is market framework complexity, increasing, going up, and time increasing, going to the right. And if we start here at the lower left, this is at the beginning of a market where there's either a gas discovery or an import. And The market continues to grow as there's infrastructure investment supported by long-term contracts, an integrated value chain develops, and more infrastructure interconnections develop. As the market grows, there are new market participants. There's price formation changes, where initially the price was a bilateral contract. There may be now more price information available and more participants who want to know what other people are paying. There's optimization and segmentation potentials across the value chain, and there's potential for increased trading, liquidity, and competition. And there are markets that are all that span this entire curve here as to where they're operating. One of the important aspects of a natural gas market is the transportation and marketing. Pre-liberalization, these functions are bundled. And what do we mean by bundled? That means that the natural gas and the natural gas and the transportation are together. The supplier or pipeline company own and move the natural gas. They often enter into long-term supply agreements to ensure supply, and they're incentivized to maintain an exclusive market area. They're also characterized by limited pipeline interconnections, and there's a limited choice of suppliers. As we move to liberalized markets, the transportation and marketing functions become unbundled. Now the pipeline company only transports the natural gas. It no longer owns the natural gas. Shippers now contract for capacity on pipelines, and the pipeline companies are incentivized to increase utilization and efficiency. And the shippers may be natural gas producers, consumers, distributors, or marketers who contract capacity in the pipeline to move their gas to different market areas. The pipeline company is characterized with a regulated transportation tariff and regulated third-party access. And now there are multiple pipeline interconnections. So you can see that different producers can go to different pipelines and also to different customers. The natural gas and transportation components are separate, and now end users can choose their suppliers. So keeping these structures in mind, let's look at what changed in the US natural gas market, how it evolved. From 1938 to 1985, pipeline companies had monopolies in geographic areas. And after the mid-1990s, they were liberalized, and there were multiple suppliers and buyers. And the drive for this change was a market realization of the benefits of competition and a desire to eliminate government intervention. In the US, the consumer was required to buy natural gas from a pipeline company, and the regulator initially was the Federal Power Commission and later the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or the FERC. There were regulated wellhead natural gas prices, which initially were low starting in 1954, and then later adjusted to higher prices in 1978. The path to liberalizing the market came in the form of several different regulatory actions, starting in 1978 with the Natural Gas Policy Act, and continuing on with several different FERC orders in order to liberalize the market and unbundle transportation and gas marketing services. The final act in 1992 was FERC Order 636, which required pipeline unbundling and pipelines to provide particular services and electronic bulletin boards. And the gas market has developed continuously after the mid-1990s to continue to grow and thrive in the United States. Let's now look at the EU natural gas market evolution. Before 1998, the market was dominated by national gas company monopolies. Suppliers generally held the monopoly position in their market area. Pipelines were owned by suppliers or producers, and there's point-to-point transportation. Bilateral contracts were used, and there was really no gas regulator. The drive for liberalization for change came really from large industrial consumers seeking price transparency and freedom to select their supplier. The market's aim was really a competitive gas market and also for a continent-wide gas market. The regulatory actions taken in the EU were three main regulatory actions, its directives. In 1998 was the first gas directive, which called for a stepwise opening of market, access to infrastructure via negotiated third-party access, and separation of transmission accounts from marketing accounts. The stepwise opening wasn't sufficient, it wasn't happening fast enough, so a second gas directive was enacted in 2003 and the corresponding regulation in 2005. This accelerated the market opening, called for regulated third-party access, and legal and functional unbundling of the pipelines. Still more action was needed, and in 2009, the third gas package was enacted, which called for structural unbundling of transmission, mandatory entry-exit regime, and the development of EU network codes. Like in the US, the regulatory actions taken and which needed to have changes made to achieve the desired market outcomes. So after 2009, there were multiple sellers and buyers began using standard contracts. Gas transmission system was independent of the gas merchant activities. There was an entry-exit regime, and gas was traded at virtual hubs. There were independent gas regulators and EU network codes. In watching the evolutions of these markets, we have identified what we call attributes of effective market regulation, which are high-level principles in successful markets. They are that the market includes a framework which supports investment in infrastructure and supply development, that the market delivers market-based, non-subsidized wholesale commodity pricing, provides flexibility to negotiate commercial agreements with counterparties of choice, promotes contract sanctity and stability of fiscal, legal, and regulatory frameworks, and establishes and maintains fit-for-purpose, transparent, non-discriminatory legislation and regulations. Finally, our observations on regulatory evolution are that there's no single model to creating a successful natural gas market, and the regulatory solution in each country will be unique. Any new or revised legislation and regulations need to be clear and unambiguous. Balanced industry consultation process is key to prevent legislative or regulations in a vacuum and to ensure that policy objectives are achieved without unintended side effects. Transitions often take substantial time to demonstrate material effects and during the process, we want to continue to maintain a stable and predictable investment climate with sanctity of contracts and a level playing field. I hope I've provided you with a useful summary about the natural gas market evolution and what have been some of the regulatory enablers to facilitate the move to a liberalized market. Each market's path will be different, but keeping the high-level objectives in mind and making adjustments along the way are important to achieve a competitive market and the associated benefits. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Shelley, for such a comprehensive and insightful look into natural gas market liberalisation and the experiences of the United States and the European Union. Thanks also to all you viewers for joining us today, and see you again soon.